Kia ora tātou, ladies and gentlemen of the media. Can you please welcome the cast and crew of The Hobbit, An Unexpected Journey. On behalf of Warner Brothers, Metro-Goldwyn-Mayers and New Line Cinema, to welcome you to this media conference. And could I have a first question, please?
That's great, thank you.
It's possibly the easiest one we've ever done. I'm actually going to kick it off with a question actually to you, Peter, if that's okay. We've heard a lot about the fact that you've been working on the film right up to the last minute. How does it feel to be finally finished?
It's hard to say because it hasn't really sunk in yet. I guess it'll become a more real thing when we get to see it tonight. We do work up until the last minute. It's just a habit we've fallen into. Fortunately, digital filmmaking these days allows you to do that. You can literally make changes, and it's done on computers, and it kind of slots in very, very quickly. But you kind of, you keep your eye on the calendar, know when the day of the world premiere is, and then you kind of work yourself backwards from that. And so long as we've got some petrol in the car and we can drive the movie to the embassy on time, we're okay.
There's a fantastic character in this film, the Great Goblin. I was wondering to what extent, he's voiced by Mr. Humphries, to what extent was the look of this character inspired by former Prime Minister Robert Muldoon?
There's no real relationship particularly, although on the topic of the Great Goblin, I should say that it was interesting trying to cast that role because the character is very uncouth, very bad personal hygiene issues. His vocabulary is quite, small. So, obviously casting somebody from Australia seemed like the obvious place to go first. And if you look at all Australians available to us, Barry is the person that fits that bill perfectly.
This is the smallest press conference I've ever attended. But I'm grateful for the intimacy of this event. It's been a very unexpected journey for me, and I was able to bring a healthy Australian vulgarity to my role. I'm pleased I'm still in a movie. I once got all dressed up for a first night of a film I was in, and I wasn't in it. So I'm pleased I'm not on the cutting room floor. I always thought motion capture was something you did when you were taking a specimen to the doctor. But Jackson has given a new dimension to this concept. Thanks very much to all.
So Peter, there's been a lot of media scrutiny in the lead up to this film, not all of it positive. Has that dampened the experience for you?
Not really. I mean, at the end of the day, we've made a movie that we're extremely proud of, and so many people have worked for so long on the film that I think it'll take a little bit more than that to spoil the event.
What would you say to a person unsure as to whether they're going to see the film in 24 frames per second or 48 frames per second? Well,
I mean, I would suggest that that you try to look at the movie at 48 if you're able to. I mean, just to talk about that, I think The Hobbit's being released in about 25,000 screens around the world in a couple of weeks, and about 1,000 of them are 48 frames a second. So by far the vast majority are 24 frames, and it is something we've deliberately done because it is like you're sort of dipping your toe in the water and allowing people to have a look at this new way of shooting and projecting a film. I mean, the feeling that I have is, as a filmmaker, is that I have a responsibility to look at the technology that's available to us now and to think of ways in which that technology can be used to enhance the cinema-going experience. I think the thing that I think is the most similar that I've experienced in my lifetime is when I remember, hearing a CD for the first time in the middle of the 80s, I think it was sometime, and the sound of music was of a needle, scratching on vinyl, and suddenly a CD comes along and it's different, and it's just the clarity, and I think 48 frames gives the cinema-going experience the clarity and the immersiveness. Yeah, so, we just have to make the cinema-going experience more magical and more spectacular and get people coming back to the movies again.
Martin, would you say that you share any of the characteristics of Bilbo himself? Do you like the quiet life?
Do I like the quiet life? If I do, I'm f***ed. I do like a sort of quiet life. Yeah, I mean, I kind of, I don't know. I mean, a lot has been made of the connections between me and Bilbo. I think because it seemed, particular that I didn't want to leave my home and family for 18 months. But I think that's fairly normal. They came over and came back and forth. But I think for anybody on any job, that would be a consideration, not actually leaving behind the thing that is most important to you in the world. But this job is worth it. It would have to be something that would be worth it in order to do that. And this is worth it.
Hi, Russell Bailey from New Zealand Herald. A bit of consumer advice for those of you that have children. Would you take your young children to this movie, given that it was a children's book?
All 8 days that I filmed on The Hobbit, my boys were on set, and they couldn't have been more welcomed. And definitely I take my 8 and 10-year-old. I think it's an incredibly sophisticated film, but for me it sort of harks back to what Philippa was talking about earlier. In a way, I think The Hobbit is the heart that drives The Lord of the Rings. So there's an incredible good humour and buoyancy and masterful storytelling. But there's a couple of big sequences that you might want to, look, I did that when Barry's goiter was flopping around. So it's perhaps that is one of the most horrifying images. But but yes, I mean, Azog is a terrifying concept. But I mean, it's more about preparing them, and what better preparation than reading the book?
Questions like that are really up to the parents, because every child is a different person. I mean, I just remember when our kids were young, our son would be scared if there were scary, loud scenes in a film, and our daughter, she just absolutely loved that stuff. The more scary, the better for her. So I think you just have to be a good parent and make that decision based on who you know your child to be.
Can I just ask Elijah or Andy, you must have seen massive changes in the film industry and in New Zealand since the first day you rocked up on set of Lord of the Rings all those years ago.
As much as there are, new production buildings and Park Road Post, and now there's 3D cameras and there's sort of more ephemera, which is extraordinary, the atmosphere on set was exactly the same. It feels like being back in the neighborhood and amongst family and friends, and that's why I love coming back here and working with Peter and all of the wonderful people that he employs. It's like returning home every time, and it's exactly the same.
Driving back into the studios as if I'd just been there the day before, and so many familiar faces around us. But there was also something kind of inevitable about coming back here to do The Hobbit as well. I just think it's something that really had to be made here and had to be made by Pete. So I always felt when I left Wellington with Lord of the Rings that I would be back, and I'm very happy that I did come back.
What was extraordinary about the job was that, as an actor, just happy to be in work, and you try not to treat any job as just like a job, but there was nothing really could prepare you for this, because it wasn't just going to location for a week and coming back to your family. This was moving to the other end of the earth. It was uprooting your family. I have 2 daughters, and that was frightening for all of us at that stage. But we got here, and immediately the pace of life was so gentle, the welcome so extraordinary. The culture's so rich and alluring. That life, the wine's so delicious, the food's so good. Very quickly, the life part became a real treat and a pleasure and very enriching.
Peter, once and for all, for the record, could we please know why, besides the similarity with the nose, why you had to absolutely have Martin Freeman?
We never had anybody else in mind, and when we finally had the green light, sort of the other half of the story that Martin told really, when we finally had the green light and could actually offer him the role, he was tied up in the Sherlock TV show. And that was the one time where I was very, very worried, because we literally knew that if we got this piece of casting wrong, the films were not going to work. They simply wouldn't work. I mean, Bilbo has to carry the heart of the film. And Martin, I'd seen Martin on various things he'd done. I'd met him. I knew that he's a terrific actor. He's a fantastic dramatic actor with a very good sense of that irony and the absurd that we needed to really show Bilbo's, how he copes in this world and this incredible, crazy adventure that he goes on. And I was very, very down, because I thought we were in serious trouble. In the beginning of the film, the start of the film was approaching very fast, and I had downloaded the first series of Sherlock on my iPad off of iTunes to watch it, and I was so worried I couldn't sleep one night, and I just thought I'd watch Sherlock, and I lay in bed about 4 o'clock in the morning, and I just was watching him on Sherlock and thinking there is no better Bilbo in the world. I mean, he's got every quality that we want, and so that's when I thought, you know what, why don't we just try and, when he needs to go back to shoot the second series, we'll just stop filming, we'll shut down, and we'll see if we can make that work. This is a pretty radical thing to do. It's not the sort of thing you normally do in a film, but I'm incredibly pleased that we did it. It was the best thing that could have ever happened.
Thanks, me too.